And now a message from our sponsor, Alexion Pharmaceuticals. Please welcome Del LaBelle, Head of U.S. Government Affairs at Policy at Alexion, AstraZeneca Rare Disease. He is in conversation with Mike Page, Vice President, Global Regulatory Affairs, Development Strategy at Alexion, AstraZeneca Rare Disease. Del, over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Del LaBelle, and I'm the head of the U.S. Government Affairs and Policy at Alexion. And on this Rare Disease Day, we are reminded of the reason we are here today. 95% of rare diseases do not have an approved treatment option. But rare diseases aren't so rare, as collectively 30 million Americans, roughly 10% of the country, are living with rare disease. And I'm pleased to be joined today by my colleague, Mike Page, who leads our Global Regulatory Affairs Development Strategy team at Alexion. And today, we will discuss a pivotal role that rare disease research and development plays in finding new medicines for patients with rare and devastating diseases, as well as how regulations and other public policies contribute to developing these life-saving medicines. Mike, thanks for joining us. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Dale. As you say, my name's Mike Page. I'm the head of development strategy in the Global Regulatory Affairs Organization at Alexion. Our primary role is to advise teams on how to develop products in rare diseases in such a way that they have the maximum opportunity, maximum chance of approval, with product information, prescribing information, which describes effective use of the product in the safe way.
Interesting. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that overview. And the complexity to the regulatory process more generally for drugs is quite complex. I'm wondering if you can expand on the circumstances that make rare disease drug development unique from a regulatory perspective, because I don't think people necessarily contemplate that or have the fullest appreciation for some of the unique challenges or differences from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the most obvious issue that we deal with in rare diseases is the rarity of the disease, if you like. We have a relatively small pool of patients which we could enroll into clinical trials. But at the same time, we are still required, quite rightly, to provide evidence that supports efficacy and safety of the product, as we would for any other program. So what that means is that we have to be extremely efficient in the way that we run our studies. Every single patient really counts, because we don't have the luxury of having large clinical trials. So really, we have to focus very, very carefully on recruiting and retaining patients in our studies. In fact, we've got several instances where one or two patients the effect of one or two individual patients can have a huge impact on the overall outcome of a study.
Such an important point. I think when you think about the future of regulation, what's coming, what can we expect in the coming months on the regulatory front?
That was the most immediate, I think, impact that we're expecting, particularly here in the US, is the ongoing discussions around reauthorization of the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, PDUFA 7, which is kind of in discussion with Congress at the moment. So PDUFA 6, the previous version, had a big component of development around rare diseases, particularly around the concept of the use of real-world evidence. I think everybody's aware of that. We use real-world evidence a lot at Alexion. We rely very much on the use of registries and the use of natural history data in the way that we design and run our studies. We've used registry data to provide information on safe use of our products in pregnancy, for example. So, we definitely commend the FDA on advancing the use of real-world evidence. There's been some recent guidelines which have been issued, and we're very happy to be able to work with the agency around that. PDUFA 7, again, there's a real emphasis, I think, on rare disease medicine development. The Rare Disease Endpoint Advancement Program is a pilot program which will be focused on developing new endpoints. So we'll be able to work with the FDA on bringing new endpoints forward. That's something that we have to do in almost all of our development programs. A lot of the areas where we work there aren't endpoints which are there aren't clinical endpoints which we can use kind of off the shelf. We have to design those. So we have to work, and it's very good for us to be able to work with the FDA on developing those. And I think the concept of like enhanced communication between sponsors and the FDA throughout development is something that we definitely welcome. I think one of the good things about working in rare diseases is that we have interesting programs in interesting new diseases. Generally speaking, regulators are interested in the things that we do, so that we have a good relationship with the review divisions that we work with. So the fact that is, I guess that's become part of the PDUFA 7 discussion, I think is encouraging to us, and we really look forward to working with FDA as we advance the availability of new medicines for rare diseases.
So, speaking in part of partnering with the FDA, we're seeing a lot of proposed policies applying components and learnings from existing centers of excellence at the FDA to rare disease to both increase coordination at the FDA and ensure the rare disease patient voice is represented. For example, the Speeding Therapy Access Today STAT Act, as we know it, would essentially require an FDA Institute on Rare Diseases and Conditions to help internal coordination on rare disease product review, share expertise, and facilitate collaboration with other health agencies. Essentially would serve as the engagement office for rare disease stakeholders to implement cross-center rare disease policy development and coordinate rare disease regulatory science activities. From your perspective, Mike, what is your perspective on these types of regulatory reforms? Would a rare disease center of excellence or implementation of some COE components help speed access to rare disease medicines?
I think it's fair to say that increasing the level of discussion around rare diseases at the FDA is something that we would definitely support. I think engaging stakeholders in rare diseases, particularly patients and patient groups, I think is something that the FDA has something of a good track record on. And I think enhancing that and institutionalizing that within the agency is something that I think would be kind of beneficial to everybody who's involved in bringing forward new therapies in these areas of unmet medical need. So I think that I think just the fact that we're talking about rare diseases in the context of regulatory improvements around general regulatory initiatives is definitely something that we welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that perspective. Great, Mike. Very insightful. Thanks for your remarks. Are there any other programs in the oncology space that would be beneficial to the patient community?
I mean, I think that I think it's well established that the implementation of the Oncology Center of Excellence has been a huge advance in oncology development. So I think that having a similar approach could certainly bring similar benefits in the rare disease world. Well, I think one in particular, the RealTime Oncology Review, which has been a pilot program in the Oncology Center of Excellence, seems to have been very useful in advancing or in accelerating the review and increasing the collaboration in review for oncology products. I think PDUFA 7 has got that split real-time review proposal, which goes beyond oncology. And I think that potentially could be of benefit to us.
Great. Thanks, Mike. As you're aware, the Biden administration and congressional members have been focused on increasing clinical trial diversity through legislative and regulatory proposals. This is something that Alexion is committed to, clinical trial diversity. Can you talk about specific ways that Alexion is trying to recruit more diverse patient populations?
I mean, there's certainly a lot of interesting developments to enhance the overall reach in terms of communities who aren't well served by clinical trials. One particular, I think digital remote monitoring is something that we're looking at in terms of using new tools and technologies to access patients and give patients access to our clinical trials, more importantly, that minimizes the burden, allows us to assess and report data remotely. That's something that is early stage, but we're looking at. But I think overall, one of the one of the key factors that we take into account at Alexion is really aligning our clinical trials as effectively as we can to align to the communities who are affected by the diseases where we operate. So I think interacting directly, with patient advocacy stakeholders allows us to do that and actually have clinical trial populations which best represent the communities, those disease communities.
Great. That's really fantastic. And thank you, Mike. And on behalf of Alexion, thank you for letting us share our perspective today. It's critical to continue the discussion among stakeholder communities, as it really will help inform policy recommendations going forward. And Alexion, collectively, we hope to work with the rare disease community to further refine public policy recommendations around accelerating access to rare disease therapies in the coming weeks. Thank you again.